The Forgotten Chapter, Cain's Untold Mission on Catachan. Introduction. A hidden tale of the Imperium's unlikeliest hero. Commissar Ciaphas Cain, a name that echoes through the vast reaches of the Imperium, evoking both admiration and dread. The self-proclaimed hero of the Imperium, whose exploits have been meticulously chronicled in the now famous Cain archive, compiled by Inquisitor Amberly Vale. Yet, for all we know of this legendary figure through these accounts, there remain shadowy periods in his illustrious career, missing pieces in the puzzle of a man whose reputation often outshone the complex reality of his existence. Among these forgotten chapters lies a tale of particular significance. Cain's classified mission to the death world of Catachan during his formative years as a commissar. This mission, deliberately omitted from official Imperial records and only fleetingly referenced in Cain's personal memoirs, represents a crucial turning point in his development, both as an officer of the Commissariat and as the man who would later become a legend throughout the Imperium. What transpired on that lethal jungle world? What crucible of adversity shaped the young commissar into the survivor whose exploits would one day be celebrated across thousands of worlds? The answers lie buried in fragments of personal testimonies, unofficial reports, and the rare unredacted passages from Cain's own recollections. The man behind the myth, Ciaphas Cain, before Catachan. Before delving into the Catachan mission itself, we must understand the Commissar as he was before this pivotal assignment. Unlike the confident, battle-hardened figure portrayed in later accounts, the early Ciaphas Cain was a study in contrasts, a newly appointed Commissar, already developing the survival instincts and self-preserving cunning that would serve him throughout his career, yet still untested by the truly harrowing experiences that would forge his legend. Graduating from the Schola Progenium with commendable but unremarkable scores, Cain had been assigned to various regiments in relatively low-intensity conflict zones. These early postings had given him a taste of combat, but had not yet exposed him to the true horrors of war that lurked in the darker corners of the galaxy. His reputation at this stage was still Malia Blea, blank slate, upon which future exploits would write the name of a hero, whether he sought such recognition or not. What distinguished the young Cain even then was his remarkable understanding of human psychology. Unlike many of his more zealous colleagues in the Commissariat, who ruled through fear alone, Cain had already begun to recognize the value of earning genuine respect from the troops under his supervision. This instinctive grasp of leadership would be tested to its limits in the unforgiving jungles of Katachan. Imperial records from this period describe Cain as efficient but unconventional, a description that hints at the methods that would later become his hallmark. Yet, there was a vulnerability to the early Cain, an uncertainty beneath his carefully cultivated facade of confidence. In his own censored memoirs, he admits to fabricating a persona of competence, while privately harboring doubts about his abilities and his place within the rigid structure of the Imperial Guard. It was this Ciaphas Cain, talented but untested, adaptable yet uncertain, who received sealed orders directing him to the notorious death world of Catachan in the early 930s. Maya 41, a mission that would change everything. Katachan, the Green Hell. To comprehend the magnitude of Cain's trial, one must first understand Catachan itself, a world so hostile that its very name is synonymous with lethal danger throughout the Imperium. Classified as a death world of the highest order, Katachan is a verdant nightmare, a planet-wide jungle teeming with flora and fauna evolved for one purpose: killing. The atmospheric conditions alone would be enough to break lesser men, perpetually hot and humid, with air so thick with spores and microorganisms that unmodified humans require specialized filtration equipment for even short-term survival. But it is the infamous native life forms that truly earn Catachan its reputation as the Green Hell. From the towering Catachan Devil, a multi-limbed predator capable of dismembering a space marine, to the microscopic brain leaf which colonizes a victim's nervous system before erupting through their skull, every aspect of Catachan's ecosystem has evolved to prey upon unwary humans. Even the plant life is hostile to venomous barbs, digestive acids, and strangling vines await any who venture into the dense undergrowth. The very ground itself seems alive and malevolent, with quicksand bogs that can swallow entire platoons and fungal colonies that release lethal neurotoxins when disturbed. Yet humans survive on Katachan. More than survive, they have adapted to this hellish environment and emerged as some of the Imperium's finest warriors. The Catachan jungle fighters are legendary throughout the galaxy for their resilience, survival skills, and unmatched proficiency in jungle warfare. Children born on Catachan who survive to adulthood are already hardened veterans of a lifelong war against their homeworld. Their typical mantra, "If it bleeds, we can kill it," speaks to their indomitable spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. It was to this world that Commissar Ciaphas Cain was dispatched, ostensibly to oversee the formation and training of a new Catachan regiment designated as the 183rd. But as classified documentation would later reveal, his true mission was far more complex and fraught with peril than even this daunting assignment suggested. The official mission: Regiment 183. The formation of the 183rd Catachan Regiment, later nicknamed Cain's Cavaliers by its own members, a name Cain himself found both embarrassing and potentially dangerous to his carefully maintained reputation, came at a time of increased Imperial military expansion. The constant warfare that defined the latter days of the 40th millennium required a steady supply of fresh combat units, and the Catachan jungle fighters were in particularly high demand for operations on death worlds and dense jungle planets. According to declassified Departamento Militarum records, the 183rd was to be formed from a mix of veteran fighters and newer recruits who had recently reached maturity. The regiment was slated for deployment to the Spinward Front, where their expertise in guerrilla warfare and survival in hostile environments would be invaluable against orc encroachments in densely forested worlds. What made this assignment unusual was the decision to send a commissar to oversee the regiment's formation, rather than waiting until the unit was ready for deployment. Catachan regiments were notorious for their resistance to commissarial authority stories of commissars suffering unfortunate accidents. Shortly after being assigned to Catachan units were whispered throughout the officio, Prefectus. The Catachans' independent spirit and self-reliance made them resistant to the traditional methods of maintaining discipline in Imperial Guard regiments. The official briefing given to Cain was straightforward: ensure the new regiment met Imperial standards of discipline and readiness, prepare them for off-world deployment, and instill proper respect for Imperial authority. These objectives alone would have been challenging enough, given the Catachan's reputation. But buried within these mundane orders lay the true purpose of Cain's assignmenta, purpose known only to a select few within the highest echelons of Imperial command. The true mission: Shadows in the Jungle. The redacted portions of Cain's mission brief, pieced together from fragments of inquisitorial archives and later references in secured Vox communications, reveal that the formation of the 183rd Regiment was merely a cover for a far more sensitive operation. Intelligence gathered by Imperial agents had indicated potentially heretical activity centered around a remote region of Catachan's equatorial Belton area known locally as the Blackvine Nexus. Reports spoke of strange disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and disturbing rituals practiced in the depths of the jungle. More alarming were indications that these activities might be connected to elements within the Catachan population, itself possibly even extending to members of the very regiment Cain was assigned to help form. The true parameters of Cain's mission were threefold. Identify the source and nature of the heretical activity in the Black Vine Nexus, determine the extent of contamination within the local population, and the nascent 183rd Regiment, eliminate the threat with minimal disruption to Catachan's vital recruitment of Imperial Guard soldiers. What made this mission particularly delicate was the requirement for absolute discretion. If word spread that the Imperium suspected heresy on Katachan, it could damage morale and recruitment across the planet and potentially trigger violent resistance from the fiercely independent Catachan population. Even more concerning was the possibility that premature action might drive the heretical elements deeper underground, making them impossible to root out completely. Cain was selected for this mission precisely because of the qualities that his superiors had observed in his early career: his ability to gain the trust of those under his command, his talent for observation, and his knack for survival in hostile environments. What his superiors could not have anticipated was how profoundly this mission would test those qualities, nor how the experience would transform the young commissar. First contact, the wary welcome. Cain's arrival on Catachan was inauspicious, to say the least. As his transport shuttle descended through the planet's thick, cloud-laden atmosphere, the pilot struggled against violent thermal updrafts and swirling air, Carenza common hazard of Catachan's volatile climate. The landing pad at Fort Ironhide, the main Imperial outpost in the region where the 183rd was being formed, was little more than a cleared section of hardened earth surrounded by towering jungle vegetation. In his personal memoirs, Cain describes his first impression of Catachan with characteristic dry humor. As the shuttle doors opened, I was greeted by a wall of heat and humidity that made me instantly regret every life choice that had led me to this moment. The air felt thick enough to chew and carried an overwhelming melange of organic scents, most of them suggesting processes of decay rather than growth. My uniform was soaked through with sweat before I'd taken 3 steps onto Catachan soil, and I hadn't even met the natives yet. Those natives were waiting for him, a delegation of Catachan officers who would form the command structure of the 183rd Regiment. Led by Colonel Ronan Drake, a scarred veteran missing his left arm below the elbow, reportedly lost to a Catachan barking toad in his youth. The reception committee regarded their new commissar with undisguised suspicion. "So they've sent us another one," Drake reportedly commented, looking Cain up and down with an evaluating gaze. "Let's see how long this one lasts." The implied threat was clear, and Cain was acutely aware of the reputation Catachan regiments had for losing their assigned commissars. In that moment, he made a decision that would define his approach to the entire mission rather than attempting to assert his authority through intimidation. As the commissarial handbook might suggest, he opted for disarming honesty. "Colonel Drake," Cain responded, wiping sweat from his brow, "I'm not here to interfere with how you run your regiment. The way I see it, you've survived this Emperor-forsaken death trap of a planet your entire life, which makes you the expert, not me. I'm just here to make sure the Departamento Militarum gets its paperwork in order so your men get the equipment and support they need." This approach, deferring to the Catachan's expertise while positioning himself as an ally rather than an overseer, caught Drake and his officers off guard. It was the first demonstration of the interpersonal acumen that would later become Cain's trademark, and it earned him something far more valuable than immediate respect. It earned him a chance to prove himself. The testing of Cain. The Catachans were not so easily won over, however. In the days following his arrival, Cain was subjected to what he later recognized as a carefully orchestrated series of tests designed to evaluate his character, abilities, and resolve. These challenges ranged from the subtle to the potentially lethal, all aimed at determining whether this new commissar was worthy of the Catachan's truster, whether he would meet the same fate as many of his predecessors. The first test came in the form of his assigned quarters, a dilapidated outbuilding on the periphery of Fort Ironhide, suspiciously close to the jungle perimeter. As Cain discovered his first night, the structure's roof had been deliberately damaged to allow entry to the local fauna, including a nest of venomous spine rats that had taken up residence in his footlocker. Only his natural alertness and quick reflexes saved him from a painful death, qualities that did not go unnoticed by the watching Catachans. When he eventually rejoined the patrol, now conveniently regrouped some distance away, Sergeant Harker greeted him with newfound respect. "Not bad, Commissar," the Katachan admitted. "Most of your kind would have emptied their bowels before emptying their last pistol magazines." These tests, dangerous as they were, served a vital purpose in establishing Cain's position among the Catachans. Each challenge he survived increased his credibility and provided opportunities to demonstrate that he was not the stereotypical commissar they had expected. Moreover, they allowed him to begin building the network of relationships and trust that would prove essential to his true mission. Uncovering the conspiracy. As Cain gradually earned a measure of acceptance among the Catachans, he began the delicate work of investigating the rumors of heretical activity in the Blackvine Nexus. This required exceptional caution. Direct questioning would arouse suspicion, while any obvious intelligence gathering might alert the perpetrators. Instead, Cain adopted a strategy of careful observation and indirect inquiry, using his official duties as cover for gathering information. His breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a training exercise with a platoon of the newly formed 183rd, Cain noticed one of the younger soldiers, Private Denos, displaying unusual behavior. While the Catachans were known for their distinctive tattoos and ritual scarification, Denos bore markings that seemed oddly different, subtle variations in pattern that Cain's trained eye recognized as potentially significant. More telling was the private's reaction when the patrol approached a particular section of the jungle. While the other Catachans showed their usual alertness to natural threats, Denos exhibited signs of ritualistic reverenceismal gestures and muttered phrases that might have gone unnoticed by someone less observant than Cain. Rather than confronting Denos directly, Cain employed a more subtle approach. He arranged to be assigned to the same patrol as the private on subsequent exercises, gradually striking up a rapport based on Cain's apparent interest in Katachan's spiritual beliefs and traditions. This approach played to the Commissar's strength, shiz, genuine curiosity about human nature combined with his talent for earning trust through seemingly casual conversation. Over several weeks, Cain pieced together fragments of information that pointed to a disturbing conclusion. What had begun as indigenous Catachan, spiritual practices, rituals designed to appease the deadly spirits of the jungle, had been corrupted by outside influence. Approximately 3 years earlier, a wise woman had emerged from the depths of the Blackvine Nexus, bringing with her new variations on traditional rites that promised greater protection from the dangers of Catachan. This woman, known only as Mother Vane, had gradually gathered a following among certain elements of the local population. Her influence had spread through family connections and tribal affiliations until it reached even into the ranks of the Imperial Guard regiments being formed on Katachan. What made her teachings particularly insidious was their subtle nature. They appeared to be merely extensions of existing Catachan beliefs rather than radical departures. However, Cain's trained eye recognized the hallmarks of something far more dangerous. The altered symbols, the specific patterns of ritual, the emphasis on blood offerings to the jungle all pointed to nascent chaos worship, specifically bearing the marks of Nurgle's influence. The connection made perfect sense. On a world where death and decay were constant companions, the false promises of the plague god could find fertile ground. The question now was how deeply this corruption had spread, and whether it could be excised without destroying the regiment and potentially Catachan's value to the Imperium as a whole. Conclusion: the hero forged in Green Hell. The Untold mission on Katachan represents more than just an early success in Ciaphas Cain's career. It was a crucible that forged many of the qualities that would later make him a legend. In the unforgiving jungles of the Death World, facing both natural terrors and the corruption of chaos, Cain developed the adaptability, resourcefulness, and interpersonal skills that would serve him throughout his life. What makes this chapter particularly significant is how it challenges the conventional narrative of Cain's career. Often portrayed as a reluctant hero whose achievements stemmed from self-preservation rather than courage, the Catachan mission reveals a more complex truth. While Cain's survival instincts certainly played a role in his decisions, his actions demonstrated genuine leadership and tactical acumen. He chose a difficult and dangerous path when easier options were available, recognizing that the greater good of the Imperium required precision rather than purging. For students of Imperial history, this forgotten chapter offers valuable insights into not only Commissar Cain, but also the unique culture of the Catachan jungle fighters and the complex relationship between different branches of the Imperium's vast military apparatus. It stands as testament to the fact that even the most well-documented heroes have untold story shadows and depths that add richness to their legends. As Inquisitor Amberly Vale noted in one of her rare unredacted commentaries on Cain's memoirs, what happened on Catachan shaped everything that followed. The Ciaphas Cain who emerged from those jungles was not the same man who entered them. He had been tested against the worst that both nature and chaos could offer, and in surviving, he discovered capacities within himself that even he had not suspected. The hero of the Imperium may have been born in later, more famous battles, but the man who would bear that title was forged in the green hell of Katachan.